Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel. I make a lot of quilts, and a lot of the quilts I make I will hang on the wall, and I use a specific method to hang my quilts. And I put a sleeve on the back, and even that quilt hanging behind me right now has a sleeve on it and is hanging on a curtain rod. Well, I like to hang quilts over my sofa, over a bed, and even in my dining room. In fact, in my previous home I lived in before I moved, I had this beautiful fall quilt hanging in our dining room. Quilts on the wall add a lot of personality and warmth to a room, and whenever anyone walked into that area, they just loved that quilt. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the kind of rod you would need to use and how to go about attaching the sleeve on your quilt. So let's get started. All right, this is one that my husband and I both made years ago, and I use this quite often. It's my favorite rod to hang quilts. What we did was, because we custom made it, we went to the hardware store, and in the lumber department they sell those closet rods that they always put in all the closets to hang clothing on. We asked them to cut it a certain length, and it was very inexpensive, probably just a few dollars. And then in the same hardware store, I found unfinished finials that just screw on. Now, if you're using either one you make or one you purchased, you want to determine if this rod can be, the finial can be removed. If it can be removed, then you only need to measure the rod itself and not the finial. So what you would do is just hang this over, your tape measure over, loosely hang it, all right, to measure approximately how wide your strip of fabric needs to be. And then you would add a couple of inches to it. That way you can remove the finial and slide the rod in through the sleeve and then put the other finial on at the other end. Let's say your finial can't be removed. Then measure the widest part of the finial and then add a few inches to that. You want your sleeve to be slightly loose so that everything slides in and out and you don't tear your sleeve putting it on, taking it on and off, okay? Now, to measure the length of your sleeve, you want to measure from the edge of your binding where it is on the back, and then you're going to go over to the other side and measure to here, and that would be the length of your sleeve. And then you would add an inch to that measurement. So overall, you're adding an inch to the length and 2 inches to the width. All right, it's always easier to make something smaller than it is to make it bigger. Okay, now, let's suppose you're using a really thin cafe rod and you don't want the rod to show, and you want to make what I call a hanging quilt. No one can see how it's up there. So then you would measure over a couple of inches from the edge of your binding. And this is how it's going to work. You would have your rod, this is my pretend rod here. You have it slipped in there, okay? And your hook on the wall is going to be right in here, and your cafe rod rests over it. And the kind of hooks that I use are those big plastic ones with the magic tape on it in which you can remove it easily. So get a really skinny cafe rod, because the finials on the end are really small, and it can comfortably hang over this. So you want to make your sleeve short enough so that the hook will come out to grab your rod. So let me show you how to prepare the sleeve to put it on. Once you've got it cut out, you're going to fold over the edge, and go to your ironing board to do this step. Fold the edge over 1/4 of an inch, press it with your iron. Then fold it over again and press it with your iron. Do this at both ends of the sleeve. Then, at your sewing machine, go ahead and stitch right along that fold line there. Do that at both ends. Then on one edge, on one of the other edges, do the same thing. Fold it over 1/4 of an inch and press. Fold it over 1/4 of an inch and press, and then stitch along that edge. So go ahead and have your binding stitched on the front. Then take your sleeve that you've just stitched and center it on the back, wherever you want it to be. Then go ahead and pin it up there. So you've got the raw edge of the sleeve at the top raw edge of the quilt. Go to the front and stitch over that same stitch line that you did to put the binding on. So now it's incorporated into that seam, okay? Now you're going to fold the binding over to the back. If you've never watched my videos before, and I do my binding a little differently than a lot of quilters, so I'll quickly go over what I do. I take the folded edge of the binding and I bring it past the stitch line that it's stitched on with. Bring it past that edge, and then I pin it down. So up here at the top, you're going to fold it over the stitch line, and then place pins in this manner, like this, on the back, all the way across. Then flip it over to the front, and you're going to do stitch in the ditch. That's where this dark purple and this light violet come together. You're not going to stitch on the binding, but you're going to stitch right next to it, right in that ditch. Stitch it all the way across, and then you're done. Now let's say you've got a quilt in which you've got the binding on and you want to put a sleeve on it. Take your sleeve and finish all 4 edges by folding it over and then stitching it. Then put it face down on the back of your quilt, and you see the stitch line there where my binding is stitched on. You're going to place your sleeve slightly above that line. Okay, go ahead, pin it down like this, and then turn it over to the front and stitch in the ditch all the way across. So that's how you can put a sleeve on after you've already completed your quilt. So as you can see, attaching that sleeve edge to underneath your binding is really, really simple. But now what I'm going to do is show you how to attach the bottom of the sleeve. And all you need is a needle and thread, and you're going to do just a very basic hand stitch. So here I've got my needle and thread all set up, and I've doubled my thread and then knotted the 2 ends at the bottom, at the end of the thread. So all you're going to do is, whatever fabric is on the back of your quilt, you're going to go underneath here and just catch some of that. Don't go all the way through your quilt to the front where those stitches will show. And then just grab then the edge of the sleeve and pull on it like that. And I'm going to do it a few more times. So again, you just grab a little bit of the fabric on the back of the quilt, then go and grab underneath the sleeve itself and pull it through, and I'll do it one more time. And there you go. And then once you get down to the end, you just do a few stitches in place, tie it off, and you're all done. You remember that quilt I showed you at the beginning, the one that was hanging on the wall in my dining room? Well, here it is. After we moved, the wall in our dining room was built a little too small, so I couldn't put it back up, so I was very, very sad. So I'm going to try to have to find another place to hang it. But I wanted to show you the sleeve here. Now remember, I used a cafe rod to do this, so I didn't have to worry about the rod sticking out on the ends, and it showed. So you also don't have to worry about the fabric of your sleeve matching your fabric on the back of your quilt. You can make it out of any fabric that you like. So you can see it's really, really an easy process. Well, I hope you try putting a sleeve on a quilt and hanging it somewhere in your home. Like I said, it'll add a lot of warmth and personality to your room. If you're interested in other quilting projects or beginner sewing projects, make sure you look below your YouTube screen for those video links. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing. If you like the Sewing Room channel, one of the best ways to show your support is to subscribe by clicking on that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And make sure you click on the bell so you receive notifications for all my new videos. I'm Cheryl, this is Manny, and this is Scotty. See you next time.